Hey everybody, it's Dale Jr. back inside the Bojangles studio here for another episode, and we've got a guest today that many of you probably have never heard of, but it is a special guest that I'm extremely excited about. Marlin Yoder is coming on to the Dale Jr. Download, coming into the studio here and sitting at the desk, and Marlin left the Amish community at a young age to get involved in NASCAR, and he has had amazing success since doing that. I need to learn all about this, so let's get started. The following is a production of Dirty Mo Media. All right, so in the Bojangles studio for the Ally Guest segment, Marlin Yoder's coming in here. But I mentioned the Bojangles studio, and don't forget, 2 free bird dogs if you use the code Dale Jr., D-A-L-E-J-R, at participating stores. You have to order on Bojangles.com or on the app. And you get those 2 free bird dogs using that code. I'm seeing these hot dogs on my social media. So apparently a lot of people are very excited about this, being able to activate this code and get these free hot dogs. It's still going with Bojangles. Only on the app or Bojangles.com. I mentioned Ally is the supporter of our guest segment. They bring us great guests. And so I'm excited about that. And this guest actually worked on the Ally Chevrolet at one point in his career. And I mentioned how Marlin grew up Amish and left the Amish community. And we know that there's TV shows about this, and we're curious as to what goes behind that decision, or how do you make that decision to leave the community, but then you're severing these very strong relationships with your parents and your siblings and friends. And you make that choice, and there's no turning back. And so I am so curious to have this conversation and learn about what this must have been like for him. And not only that, he leaves knowing very little to nothing about racing and NASCAR, and in a very short time ends up becoming the front-end mechanic on one of the best teams in the sport and wins the championship. What are the odds of that? He's going to come in here and tell us all about it. So let's go ahead and get Marlin in the room. What you been up to, man?
Been working a lot outside of my normal job.
Yeah.
And then working on the race car.
Yeah.
Getting ready
Your street stock?
Yeah. Getting ready for the next race.
So I ain't seen you since Florence. Me and you ran into each other at the I guess the Icebreaker.
Yeah.
Right? And you've been beating up on them street stock guys around here with that car of yours.
Yeah, it's been a really good couple of years.
Yeah.
When we decided to build that car, there's a backstory to it, from when I raced in Wisconsin, where I get my butt beat all the time. So I wanted to build a car from the ground up that was going to be badass. In fact, the guy, Travis McIntyre, that helped me build it, I told him I was going to build the baddest street stock in the country. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yeah, okay, and then
right.
We started building it, and as we kept going, it took us a little over 2 years to do it. And then, it's the first year, would have been 2021. With COVID, I was traveling part-time on the 5 because of the roster cut.
On your cup car.
Yeah. So we raced 10 times that year, and we were on the pole 5 times, and then we kept breaking stuff. We were just wasn't finishing races. We won 2 races that year. And then last year, ran 18 races, 17 quick times, won 11 times. Yeah. So it was a really good year.
You got a special race car, man. But so the reason why I'd heard about your story a little bit, and I really wanted to bring you on to the show. And I know you've done a few podcasts about your life and your choices and all of that, but I wanted to dive into it today. You were born Amish and left the community. And so, there's even been TV shows about this, right? That you can watch on TV to learn about, that lifestyle and we've all, I mean, if anybody's seen any of those TV shows, you see that it's a very difficult choice, right, to leave.
Yeah.
So you were born in Missouri, right? Y'all moved to Wisconsin when you were 9.
Yep.
Right. So when you were born, are there levels? I don't even know where to begin yet, but I'm just going to go with my gut. Are there levels of strictness in terms of adhering to the traditional Amish ideals, right? There's levels, right? And so where would your family fall in?
I'd say we were pretty much in the middle. Like if you have a scale of 1 to 3, 3 being super strict and then 1 a lot more lenient.
Yeah.
I'd say not only like my family, but the community where I grew up was probably right there in the middle.
So what are some things that you were allowed that maybe the stricter community wouldn't have?
One, there's a bunch of different things, but like a strict community, like super strict, wouldn't be allowed to say have chainsaws,
right?
Where they would have to do everything with the big cross saw, like the old school way. And where I grew up, we could have chainsaws.
Okay.
So
why would one community maybe be different? Why was
so a lot of it comes
just long years and years of just sort of evolving into that way, or
it's kind of like an evolution, right? Through it's just a very slow evolution. Sure. But as time goes on, and if you get a certain group of people in a community where they want to evolve more, basically, like once a year, the Amish have this like special segment on Sundays at church where they'll vote on if they want to allow something new, right? So if the community isn't allowed to have chainsaws or to have cordless tools, they'll bring it to the church members' attention that they would like to vote on that. So on Sundays, everybody that has joined the church, that's members of the church, will vote yes or no if they would like to allow that.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like at the same time, it's kind of politics involved, right? Because depending on who the bishop is, the bishop might say, yeah, this is not a good idea. So a lot of people will like follow his lead. Like if the bishop says no,
you want to be on the bishop's good side.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, do these I don't even want to say arguments. Do these voting instances become animated, or is it, hey man, all right, that's the way it is. That's the vote, and that's the way it is.
It is what it is, and it's all unanimous.
Oh really?
So
what?
Yeah.
It's got to be unanimous to win, right?
So
is that what you're saying?
No. So what I'm saying is like you don't know what the next guy voted.
Right.
So like when they vote on Sundays, like they go over to the separate room, and they cast their vote, and nobody knows
who voted what.
That's
kind of nice. Yeah. So you grew up speaking Pennsylvania Dutch.
Yeah.
What is that?
So it's like a slang of German. It's sort of like a modern, like if I was to go to Germany, like their actual German that they speak there, I have a hard time actually understanding it, and I can speak very little of it. It's like it's what pretty much all the Amish have, what they speak, and it's their first language, and it's the only language they use at home. Yeah. So I didn't learn English until I went to school.
Okay. You didn't follow sports or nothing?
Nope, not allowed.
Not allowed.
No football, no And even if you were, besides reading it in the newspaper, like, you're not going to be able to follow
Right.
it.
But so you could keep up if you read it in a newspaper.
Yeah, if
That was okay.
you weren't supposed to.
You weren't supposed to have a newspaper.
You were allowed the newspaper, but you weren't supposed to like follow sports or be a sports fan.
Really?
Or talk about it. Yeah, like, that's a no. In where I grew up.
Yeah.
Now, some communities, like a
They're
community
more
where
lenient.
it's less strict, they'll allow it.
Do you look back on, that and find that fascinating? How do you, when you think about some of that, that's completely normal?
For when you're there growing up, like, you don't think about it. You don't know because you don't know any different.
I know that my impression is that every part of your day is to be productive, geared toward, there's a lot of work and effort, and you have responsibilities, and I would say what we would call chores, but
Yeah.
it's all because of this sort of ultimate goal, right, of success for the family and for the community, right?
Yeah.
Where do friendships and relationships fall in?
A lot of that happens on Sundays. When you go to church on Sunday is when you get to see your friends.
You don't get to hang out and shoot crap and BS and
I was never
during the week,
and it's
stuff.
pretty common.
Yeah.
Like, you're not allowed to go. You don't have time,
right?
but you're not allowed to, like, go fishing with your buddies or to go hang out and do whatever. Like, that very seldom happens. If that happens, it's because the whole family went to see your cousins or
Okay.
something.
Well, but you did hunt and fish. Family did hunt and fish, right? But
Yes.
because it was there's a goal to catch fish and
Put food on the
put
table.
food on the table. So you wouldn't do that with your buddies. You weren't allowed to. Hey man, y'all go catch some fish.
Not generally,
Really?
because we always had chores to do.
Yeah.
Like-
What were your chores like?
So, like, I'll walk you through a day. So you would get up early in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning generally, and go to the barn to do chores. And growing up, we always had between 20 and 30 horses, 80 beef cattle, 1 or 2 milk cows that we milked by hand for the family's milk supply. We always had 24 chickens, egg-laying chickens for our own egg supply. We always raised usually around 100 meat birds for chicken for the family through the year. We always had, our own pigs for our own pork use. Like, we raised everything, right? So you had morning chores. You had to get all the horses in, feed them grain, and that's when you had your day planned out, and you knew which horses you need to keep in the barn to get ready, whether you had to go down the road, go do field work that day, like keep the workhorses in, get them harnessed up. So you always had like an hour and a half worth of chores to do in the morning, or an hour or something like that. And then you would eat breakfast, and then in the later years there, my dad had his own sawmill. So I would go work in the sawmill for like an hour or so until I had to go to school. So go to school, come back from school, I go back to the sawmill, help my dad until 6 o'clock at night, and then go to the barn, do that same round of chores again, and then it was time for dinner and off to bed.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think that Amish are really known for is the quality of work. And so when out on a hunting property that we own, we've had some fence work done and lean-tos built, and the quality of work is insane. Would you agree? Like, that's is that like a pride and respect thing? It's just like there's this sort of perfection, even in something as simple as a fence.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it is just the perfection fact.
Did your I don't know if you were you experienced this because of your dad's sawmill and you worked in that bubble, but when someone in the community would go out to, was it common or did you ever know of anybody that would go out and do work for someone outside the community, right?
Yeah.
What are the thoughts and concerns, I suppose, of that happening? Because I would assume I want to be really respectful toward this because I do appreciate you and appreciate the Amish community, and I don't know nothing about it, and I'm very curious to learn, but I would assume, right, for your family doesn't want you to leave.
Right.
They don't want you to leave. And so there's a bit of an assumed risk when you or anyone in the community were to go out and do any work. Correct. For someone outside of the community. And so how does that process happen with that in mind? Does the father have concerns? Does he share those concerns? Hey, you're going to see things. You're going to see things that you've never seen before. You're going to experience someone doing something that you've never done or can do, right? Yeah. What is the thought process behind that?
Yeah, there's definitely a big concern about that because they don't want to expose the kids to the outside world. Right. They want you to see as little as possible. So, like when they go to the grocery store, if they have to, like they won't take you with because, like I remember when I was pretty young, I don't know, 11, 12 years old. I remember going with my mom to Walmart, and I don't remember what we went for, but we walked by the TV section, and I'm like, whoa, like look at all this. This is so cool. Yeah. Right? But like mom would like hustle me through there and like don't look at the TV. Like I wasn't allowed to look at it, but I'm like, checking it out. Sure. So like that, they try to not expose you to any of that so you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. You don't know what's out there. You don't know that there's something else other than the life that you've been taught and lived. And then that plays into the working part of it too, is they will try to keep you at home on the farm as long as possible until you're 18 or more to try to minimize that. And then as you get to be 18 to 21 years old is when they kind of start releasing you to like, all right, you can go work for this construction guy that builds houses, right, or whatever. So it's common for Amish boys to seek employment outside of the community, and that was okay? No, the contractors are Amish. Oh, okay. So they work for Amish contractors that build houses, build barns, whatever. Out and about. That outside the community. Yes, that do work outside of the community. I got you. Dang. Yeah. All right, and so that's probably the most vulnerable that you'll be. Pretty much. Case in point, right? You're the case in point of that, right? And so, or you're a great example. And so, all right, you're 15 years old and a friend in the community gave you a radio. Right, and that's not allowed. No, definitely not allowed. How much are you risking doing this? At that point, I was risking on Sundays when we go to church. Like if I get caught with the radio, right, my dad's going to smash the radio, and then I'm grounded, which means on Sundays when we go to church, right after church is done, a lot of the like my mom and dad would stand around and BS with their friends for a couple, hour and a half or whatever before you had to go home. Yeah. Well, that's when we got to have time with our friends. Yep. Well, if you got in trouble for something, like I'm within 10 feet of my dad all day. The rest of the day. For however long that I'm grounded for, right? So now you don't get to see your friends, you don't go to hang out, and everybody knows why you're in trouble. Yeah. Because word gets out in a hurry, right? Yeah. Of why you're grounded. So yeah, that's that. And then there's always more chores, right? You get in trouble for something like that, it's
Doing more.
That's like your.
So where'd you keep the radio?
I hid it in the hay barn most of the time.
That sounds like a place that it could get found.
I had some pretty good spots.
What was it?
The first one, the best spot I ever had was in the joist above a door. But not above a door, but beside a door. And the only way you could get to it was stand on the feed trough for the horses, where I would feed the horses. I would have to stand on that, and it was like up and over, like in behind a board.
Yeah.
And I knew he'd never find that.
And so where would you listen to the radio?
So that's where I first kept the radio. And then I also, as I got braver, I would keep it in my bedroom.
Jeez.
That's when I got in trouble.
So he did catch you.
Yeah. So
what were you doing? Walk me through that.
My mom found the radio when she was cleaning.
Where was it?
So I had a little dog, and I had an old couch cushion, for the dog bed.
Yeah.
Right? Well, I took that foam out of the couch cushion, and I had hollowed a hole inside of that, and that's where I hid all my stuff that I wasn't supposed to have. And
did you have other stuff inside the radio?
Yeah, I messed around with smoking cigarettes.
Oh no!
And
I think they could smell it. Like it would be you could, like there's no smoking cigarettes, so that like you could pick that up in a second.
Yeah, I would always do that like Sunday afternoons, which was usually like I listened to the radio sometimes at night before I went to sleep.
Just super low.
It was so yeah. Well, I always had earbuds. Like that's the only way I could listen to it. But I was always scared shitless that I was gonna fall asleep with my earbuds on, and then I wouldn't hear my mom or dad hollering in the morning.
Yeah.
And when they come up to wake me up, they're gonna catch me, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that was scary. But most of the time when I listened to the radio would be Sunday afternoons. Like we would get home from church, and I'd go to the back 40. All right, go for a walk. Right, so I would either saddle the horse and go riding, or I'd just walk clear to the back 40 and just hang out back on the hill.
And if you're a dad and your son's taking these walks or whatever, going and disappearing for a bit, you gotta, your dad's smarter than you think.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so he knows, he don't know what you're doing, but he knows you're not just taking a walk.
No, that's why I eventually would get caught, because they suspected something.
They did.
Yeah.
So so you got the traditional punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was embarrassing.
Yeah.
Eventually though, who was the friend that gave you the radio? Do you remember?
Alan.
Where is he?
He is still in Wisconsin. He owns his own business, building barns and pole barns and stuff.
Is he in the community still?
No, he left.
Yeah, he left.
He actually left the Amish a year and a half before I did.
Okay.
So when I left, eventually, he's the one that helped me.
Helped
me get a job.
Okay.
He picked me up.
Yeah.
He took me for my first haircut.
Gotcha. So at one point, that radio gets smashed, right? You get another radio out of an old truck.
Yep.
So this is a car radio or old style truck radio.
Yeah, it was an old cab over semi truck that was sitting in the weeds.
And you had to wire this thing to a battery.
Yeah.
To listen to it. So you kept this down in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah, that I still to this day don't know how I ever figured that out. How I first off took it out of the truck and just pulled the wiring out, took the antenna out, took the antenna with, I took all that, but then I don't know how I ever got it wired up so it would work.
Yeah.
I don't know how I knew which wires were speaker wires, which wires were power and ground.
You just messed with it?
I guess I just messed with
it.
And
you had it down on the back side of the farm, right?
Yeah.
In the woods, you kept it in a bag.
Yeah.
So where's that radio? Is it still down there in the woods?
When I left, it was
still there.
When I left, it was actually still in the barn.
Oh,
So I'm
you
sure.
got moved up to the barn.
Yeah.
So
Because I would take, we had a 12-volt battery in my buggy. So after I turned 16, Sunday evenings is when all us young folks would get together
yes,
and do our deal. Well,
do your deal.
I had a 12-volt
What
battery.
do you mean do your deal?
When you turn 16,
Yep.
until you get married,
Yep.
every Sunday night, all the young folks we were called, we get together for, I don't know, 4 hours or so, 5 hours maybe, and we would eat dinner. And during the winter, we would play card games, play volleyball during the summer, that type of stuff. And then when you left there, if you were seeing a girl, you would take her home from there.
Yes.
And that was like the dating scene,
Right.
But yeah, so my lights on the buggy were
Ran
driven
by a battery.
a 12-volt battery. So when I got brave enough and I brought the radio in from the woods, I would put it in my buggy and take it with me on those occasions.
What did your friends and the girl, I suppose, think about? Were they nervous? Like,
I wasn't seeing a girl at the time.
but you're playing this radio
But
on the buggy,
yeah,
riding around?
yeah. But well, that's the thing. Like, you only tell like
The ones you trust.
the ones you trust.
Right.
And that's in the Amish community.
Tiny
Like,
circle,
that's a
yeah.
very tiny
Holy
circle.
cow.
So you're talking like.
All
2 or 3
right.
people.
Why were you wanting this radio so bad? What were you needing to listen to?
It started with I wanted to see what was out there, and I didn't have any way to know what's outside of the life I had without seeing it, listening to it, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And the first trigger of that was just to listen to music because you weren't allowed to.
What songs? What kind of music?
Country.
Country. Okay.
Yep. Toby Keith, Alan
Yeah.
Jackson. And we live kind of down in the hills, so it's the only station that I would get.
Gotcha.
And then that's how I got started listening to the NASCAR races on Sunday afternoons when I would do that. It's the only station I got, and then all of a sudden I'm hearing this crazy stuff on the radio.
Right. And so that's interesting to me because I don't know. I'm trying to put myself in your situation. I don't know that I would have been interested to listen to a NASCAR race when the music is so incredible, right? And
Yeah.
and hearing something like that for the very first time, like you would be like, what else is out there music-wise, right? And not tuning into a sporting event, maybe something more traditional like football or baseball, Major League Baseball, right? Something
Yeah.
more Americana, right? Where, I mean, not that NASCAR isn't, but what was it about NASCAR that was so compelling?
Well, there was a few things that played into that. Was one, it was the only station I could get in.
Okay,
2,
that would make sense.
my close group of friends would talk about this NASCAR racing thing.
How did they know about it?
They had radios before I did.
Yeah.
And one of my buddies was Alan's brother, who ended up leaving the Amish about the same time I did.
Yeah.
So they would talk about this NASCAR racing. So I was intrigued by it. Like, what's this all about? It involved fast and loud cars,
Yeah.
right? So that was part of it.
Was the automobile itself this sort of really curious thing? Because, right, you probably wanted to own a car, right?
Yeah.
Wanted to work on your own car, have a car.
At that point,
Was that part of it too?
At that point, like, I was 16. I wanted to drive a car.
Right.
Like, I just wanted to get behind the wheel and see what it
So
felt
maybe
like.
that was also what drove you to be curious about motorsports, right?
Yeah.
These guys are racing cars, right?
Yeah.
I just want to drive and own a car.
Yeah, I just wanted to get in something and drive down the road to see what it was like.
Yeah.
Like, I was probably 13, 14 before I realized that turn signals weren't automatic. Like, when you start turning the steering wheel,
Yeah.
that the turn signal comes on. But it never made sense to me why it didn't do it in the driveway. Like, I don't know, like, that was over my head.
Yeah.
And when I discovered that, I'm like, damn, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? But, like, you're just so secluded from everything. But no, so going back to the NASCAR thing, so my buddies would talk about it, and I started listening to it, and the PRN and MRN guys do an amazing job of painting this picture.
Like you're to help people understand, when would you, let's not jump all the way, I just want you to answer this simply. When did you see your first race? When did you actually get to see it?
The day I left.
Okay, so that was at what age?
I was 17.
17. So you're listening to racing at 15.
Yep.
Right? And you don't know what it looks like.
No idea.
No clue. But you're painting that picture in your head by the voices of the MRN guys like Bagley and all those guys that do it so well. That's impressive, man.
Yeah, I don't know what a racetrack looks like. I don't know what the cars look like. Like I've never seen it.
Yeah, not even pictures.
No.
Damn. So, how, if there's 10 boys your age in the community, on average, how many are going to leave?
Less than one.
Wow.
Like it's probably 1 in 100, honestly.
No
It's very uncommon. And then on top of that, 90% of the time they go back within the first year.
Damn, why do they go back?
The biggest thing is they miss their family. They're used to such a tight-knit group of their family, their friends, people. You know, in the Amish community, like where I grew up, there was 50 or 60 families, so you know everybody.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're out in a world all by yourself.
Got nobody.
You have nobody.
And trying to navigate that is probably as neat as something as simple as going to get something for lunch at a fast food restaurant might be. There's probably a bunch of very frightening, etiquette. Just people can be rough, right?
Yeah.
And they're not always going to have the grace for somebody who's out in this world for the first time, right? I imagine it could be pretty, uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable.
Right. So I want to talk to you about your thoughts of leaving. When did you first start thinking about it?
I was 16.
And how was your relationship with your family, your mother, your father? How difficult was that?
I didn't have a good relationship with my dad.
Why not?
He was a super hard guy to work with. He was always super hard on me, which now looking back, like I don't regret it.
Yeah.
Because I learned he taught me a lot. At the time, I thought he was an asshole.
Yeah.
Which he could be at times. But,
sure. Yeah.
I mean,
My dad
at some point,
yeah.
everybody is.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a good relationship with my dad through, that 15, 16, 17-year-old, which I don't think is super uncommon.
Not
maybe.
Really. No. What about your mother?
I always got along good with my mom.
Is the relationship like, I'm pretty emotional in terms of like my connection to my family, my dad, my kids. Is the Amish way of life? It appears that there's a lot less emotion, I guess.
Yeah, they don't show any.
Right, in the personal relationship, whether it's brother to sister, son to mother. In what relationship is there that connection and that emotion? Does the mother-daughter's relationship have that?
Man, there's not much.
Why?
I don't know. Like I cannot remember one time, not once, that I heard my mom and dad tell each other that they love them or that they loved us kids. They like, you just don't show emotion. They like, I don't really remember ever like my mom and dad showing each other emotion, like love, right?
Yeah.
Like it just
Is that common, or is it just, you think, more unique to your family?
it's pretty common.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might have been a little bit more, but it's pretty common.
But that's normal.
Yeah, it's pretty normal.
It's okay.
Yeah. So like, so now,
Let me ask you this: like, when you're, did you ever have a girl in the community that you had, feelings for, that you liked at any point?
I did.
Right. And so, how do you navigate that, knowing the traditional sort of approach, to relationships that you just mentioned, between your parents and siblings, and when you're starting to have these feelings for someone else for the very first time, right? How do you manage that? And what are I imagine that's very, when I'm young and I'm in school and I get the hots for this girl, we just we let them know, and we go about our, we try to go out and go get some food or whatever and do whatever we want. And you hope that it works out, and you hope she likes you, and whatever happens. But I imagine in your world, and only being able to be around that person a very small part of the week, right? It's this very, very frustrating process that's so slow.
Yeah, that, and then I wasn't old enough nor joined church, so I couldn't.
Why? Explain that to me. Like, you hadn't joined the church officially?
Yeah, so
what was the process of that?
So like from what I understand, it's standard out here for like you to baptize your baby, right?
Yeah.
The kids,
right.
when they're small,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Well, for the Amish, they don't do that. They wait until you're 16 to 18, 19 years old for you to make that decision on your own that you want to get baptized. And when you do, that's when you become a member of the church.
Okay.
When you get baptized. So until you're baptized, you are not allowed to date. You're not allowed to see girls. You're not.
Did y'all break those rules, or were you tempted to break those rules just like you were with the radio? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But you had to be super secretive because
careful,
you didn't trust anybody because people would just talk.
They would want to. I could see maybe somebody like, governing like older kids, like, you're not allowed to do that. I'm going to tell.
Absolutely. That happened a lot.
Right.
It's like a police
yeah.
thing. Yeah, for sure.
NASCAR fans, FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is here, and right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you bet your first $5. Just go to FanDuel.com/Dale to sign up. Then you can bet on everything from individual race winners to prop bets to which driver's going to take home the championship, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Start your engines with $200 in bonus bets, win or lose, when you place your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/Dale to get started. FanDuel, authorized gaming operator of NASCAR. 21 plus and present in North Carolina. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. Seek full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 877-718-5543 or visit morethanagame.nc.gov. So going back to the decision to leave, what are your apprehensions?
So the biggest one was I was scared. Like,
about what?
Of leaving and like being on my own. And then I knew if my dad was ever to get a hold of me, like, I better run as fast as I can run.
So if you made the choice to leave,
mm-hmm.
and he then, when you make the choice to leave, you're also making the choice to never see them again, right?
Correct.
But if he were to see you later, he would be upset and he would make that known? Or is it like, hey man, you made your choice, your problems, see you later?
No, I knew that if my dad got a hold of me the day that I decided to leave, and I told them that I was going to leave, it wasn't going to happen. Like, I was probably going to get my ass beat.
Right. So you couldn't tell them?
So I couldn't tell them.
Damn.
But a lot of kids do.
They tell them.
They tell their
I'm
parents,
leaving.
like, I'm leaving. Like, I'm this isn't working. I'm
Right.
going to leave. So I was scared of my dad, so I wasn't going to tell him. Like, I'm going to sneak out and be gone. So once the trigger that I'm like, all right, I'm done, I'm going to leave, was I got caught with cigarettes. And my dad grounded me for a month or something. And I'm just like, man, this is too much for a couple cigarettes, you know? But and I was just over it. I was over it. I wanted a different life. I wanted I was curious about the outside world. So I made the decision, like, from the time I was like, I don't know, to I'm leaving was like overnight.
Yep. What do you do?
So it's Sunday morning, March 9th, 2008. At that, I have 5 siblings. So we had a double-seater buggy that Mom and Dad would take to church with 4 of the siblings. And then I would take the single-seater buggy with my sister that was just younger than me. So
How much younger?
A year.
Okay.
A little over a year. So she was going...
I'm sorry. Are you and your sister and your other siblings very close? Is there like any kind of a trust bond where you might share how you're feeling?
No.
No one has a clue.
No, because I knew if I told anybody, they were going to go straight to Mom and Dad.
Yeah, immediately.
Immediately.
Got it. Okay.
Because that's just a no-no.
You're on an island.
Yeah.
All right.
So Mom and Dad always left first to go to church, and then I would leave, 5-10 minutes after them with my sister. So Mom and Dad leave. Usually when I would be done with chores Sunday morning, I would go to the house, get dressed for church, and then I would come back out, hitch the horse to the buggy, pull up to the house. My sister would get in and we go. So this day, I didn't go to the house to get ready, but nobody noticed. Mom and Dad and the rest of the family leaves. I get the horse ready. I pull up to the house. My sister comes out, and I said, you're going by yourself. I'm not going to church today. I didn't tell her I'm leaving. I just said I'm not going to church today.
Was that uncommon?
Oh yeah, you don't do that.
Yeah.
you don't rebel like that, right?
Yep.
So
What'd she say?
Oh, she started crying right away because she knew. She said, "Are you leaving?"
So she did love you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a relationship, and you just weren't allowed to, so there was some emotion.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to show it.
Yep.
And you think she, loved you like a traditional.
I think so.
Yeah, and that was tough, I bet, for her.
Yeah.
So she starts crying. But she knows how to take this thing to church.
Oh yeah.
She gonna do it?
Yep. So I said, "You're going to church by yourself today. I'm not going." So she said, "You're leaving, aren't you?" I said, "Don't worry about it. Just go to church." Damn. And she leaves, and I'm like, "All right,
now or never.
I got to go."
Yeah, you got to admit.
Because I know she's gonna go to church and tell Dad, of course, and Dad's gonna turn around and come right back home. So I got to be gone.
Yep.
So I run across the street to our neighbors. This guy drove an 18-wheeler, and he had a big shop, and he had an office out there with a phone in the office. And whenever my dad needed to use the phone for business reasons or whatever, he would go use this guy's phone. Like they had this deal worked out. So I had never used the phone before.
Damn.
So
Ever?
No. So I'm like, but as soon as my sister leaves, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go call Alan. Well, I had his phone number memorized just because I knew one day I was going to need it.
Damn.
And I run across the street and I try to dial it and it wouldn't go through. Like I'm dialing the number and it's just like, I forget what it told me, but it wouldn't go through. And then I remembered, like I sat there for a minute. I'm like, man, what am I doing wrong? Like I know that's the number. I know it's right. And then I remembered like some couple years ago, long time ago, I remembered somebody talking about dialing 1 before the phone number.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'll try that. And boom, it went through.
Oh, damn.
And I'm like, whew. So he didn't answer.
Oh, no.
I'm like, so I leave him a voicemail. And I knew he worked at a farm to where like he would work in a milk parlor. He milked cows for some big farmer.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, well, hopefully he's almost done milking cows and he'll get my voicemail. So I told him who I am, where I'm at, and I want to leave. Like I need him to come pick me up like now.
Yeah.
ASAP. I go back over the house and I had a radio again. So I put my headphones in. I'm sitting in the recliner. We had a big bay window that pointed out towards the road that goes up the hill. I'm sitting in this big bay recliner, or this recliner by this window, and listening to music, but watching the road because I know if Dad's coming back, he's coming back down that hill right there.
Why wouldn't you? So you're either waiting on this buddy to come get you, or your dad. It's one or the other.
It's one or the other. But I trusted that Al was going to make it. Like I don't know why I didn't like just tell Al to pick me up like a mile down the road or something. Like looking back, like that was kind of dumb.
I know. I'm like, damn, I wouldn't have been nowhere near where my daddy would have been coming.
Yeah, but like church was like 6 miles away, and that's a long ways to go with a horse and buggy at 6 miles an hour. But I forgot that Dad would be, hitting 25 mile an hour on the way back because I knew which horse he had. Because I figured that he would jump in the single seater that my sister just showed up with and come back. So I'm sitting there and waiting and watching the clock, and it's like, man, this is taking too long. This ain't good. And all of a sudden, here comes a horse and buggy, absolutely flying down the road, and it's my dad. And I'm like I'm SOL. Like I gotta do something. So I'm like running all these scenarios through my head. If I just run out back, or like, do I just go upstairs, lock myself in my bedroom? Al's gonna show up at some point. Like I just know he is. And so I'm like, all right, I'll go upstairs and lock my bedroom, right? Lock my door. And Dad was fit to be tied.
So he's in the house.
He comes in, and he is about to knock my bedroom door off the hinges and drag me to church. Like, he's telling me I'm grounded for X amount of time, like I'm in all this trouble, and I need to get out of there before he rips the door off the hinges. He's going to drag me to church. Like who do I think I am, and all this stuff, right? And I'm just like, shh, it's not a good situation. And this is going on for like a couple minutes. It seemed like forever. Mm-hmm. And I hear a car pulling in the driveway. So I look out my window, and it's Al. He pulls in, makes a U-turn, stops at the sidewalks. And my dad says, well, who's that? I'm like, here we go. And so I told him. So that's Al. And everybody knew who Al was because he lived not far away.
Yeah. And he had left.
Yeah. He'd left like a year and a half, maybe a year and a half before that, and stayed in the area. So Dad says, well, what's he doing here? I said, he's here to pick me up. He says, what do you mean? I said, I'm leaving. Like, I'm leaving with Al. He's here to pick me up. And I have my dad's attitude like changed 180 degrees, right? And he started crying, and I'd never seen my dad cry.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, I'd never seen real tears. And begged me to not leave. And he sits, so he goes downstairs, and I didn't have anything to take with me. Like, I had like, I don't know, $4 and something, and like quarters and pennies and stuff. I put that in my pocket. And I gotta go downstairs and walk past him, and he's sitting on a recliner and absolutely like has lost it, and is begging me to not go out, do not walk out that door, do not step out that door. And I said, no, like, my decision is made. I'm not gonna go back on that. Like, I'm gonna leave. And I walk out, and Al wasn't expecting to see a horse and buggy there, so he's like nervous. He's like, who's that? Like, what's that buggy doing here? I said, that's my dad, let's go. So I get in and we leave. And that was Sunday morning of that day. And it's now looking back, I'm like, man, I could have handled that a lot differently.
Why? How? My thoughts about it is, I wished your dad would have asked you to stay the night and he'd let you leave the next day, so that y'all could have had a minute to at least sort of explain.
Yeah.
He knew you were probably going either way.
Right.
Right? And then maybe, I don't know him, but having like just a minute to come to some terms, right? Some sort of common ground.
And I probably wouldn't have done that because I wouldn't have wanted to face my mom.
Oh,
because like I broke her heart,
right?
Like way more than dad,
right?
Like that.
Yeah.
So I would.
That would have been tough.
I was like, I did not want to do that.
So you left, driving out the driveway, man. Is this giant freaking weight falling off your shoulder? Do you remember feeling the freedom? Do you remember feeling liberated, or what was the emotion?
It was some of that, of a relief that I finally did it. I left, like I'm leaving, but at the same time I've got this whole ass world in front of me that I don't know anything about. Like I know very, very little about what's going on outside of what I grew up doing. So in a way it was scary, but now looking back and looking and seeing what I do now and the type of how the person I've become, it's that challenge that I enjoyed as I'm learning all these things when I leave.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was scary for sure.
What'd you do? What's the first thing you did?
First thing we did was we go to town on the way back to Alan's house, and we stopped at Walmart, and there was a cost cutters haircut cutting place. And of course I had the Amish haircut, like long hair all the way down, and Al takes me in this haircut place, and I'm like looking around, like I don't know anything, like it's all new to me.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, I want to get this Amish boy a haircut. And it's not the first time he had done that. And so the ladies in there knew him, and they were like, all right,
it's not the first time that he's brought somebody out of the community?
Yeah.
Oh, heck. Al's got a reputation.
Big time.
Yeah.
It was not good for him for a while. So yeah, they asked me, what do you want? Like, what cut do you want? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know what. So Al tells them what to cut me. They cut my hair, and then we go walk around Walmart. I'm like checking everything out. I'm like, man, this is wild, And he's like talking about video games and TVs and stereos and stuff. And So then he buys me some blue jeans and some T-shirts, because I didn't have anything, right?
Nothing.
Or money to buy anything. And then we left there, and we went to McDonald's.
Did you put the clothes on immediately?
Yes.
What did that feel like? Had you worn traditional, like...
No.
You'd never worn anything like that, right?
Mm-mm.
And so what was that? Was it comfortable? Was it uncomfortable? Did you feel...
It was weird.
Right? You feel like you're dressing in a foreign... like I would imagine like going and wearing some, something foreign that,
Yeah, it
might
was,
be common in that country, right? But you're not like, I don't want to wear that. That's not what we wear. Like when I go overseas, I dress like this, and people look at me because I look funny, right? Because I don't dress like the people that live there. So maybe in something like that.
Yeah, it was.
Golly, man,
it was strange.
So you're.
But I didn't care because I got to get out of these Amish clothes ASAP.
Right. In those first couple of hours, is any of your mind not wanting to go back, but is any of your mind like thinking about how your mom's reacting, right? How your family's sort of processing this?
Yeah.
How did you feel about that? I mean, you can't communicate, you can't go back, you can't call them, right? Hey, Mom, you doing okay? Is that the way when I have something going on in my life that I can't control or I can't fix, right? And there's an ultimate result that maybe I don't love. I just have to put it on the sideline, right? It is what it is, and I can't. I try to put a bunch of distance between me and that thought and that emotion, right? And eventually it will disappear in the background. I mean, is that kind of the method?
Yeah, that's what it came down to. Not only those first couple hours, but for weeks, I couldn't sleep at night.
Damn.
So, I had to figure out a way, because I was determined I was going to make it. I was going to survive. I was going to be successful. And, going back was not an option. So, I had to work. I had to make money. I had to find a place to live because I could only stay with Al for so long. So, I had to save up money to buy a vehicle. I wasn't 18 yet, so trying to navigate, okay, I can't get my license until I'm 18. So, all these things, I knew my mom and dad weren't going to give me my Social Security number, my birth certificate, and I needed all of that stuff.
How did you manage that, though? How did you get it?
That was another very bad situation. Once I turned 18, I asked my mom and dad multiple times because they would, at some point, they would call me.
Really?
Yeah.
So
well,
wait a
my
minute.
dad didn't. My mom does.
All right. So I was wondering, have you heard from them? So yes, there was some communication immediately after you left.
There was, and within a week, because they knew where Alan lived.
Okay. So they knew how to get a hold of you.
So they come down there.
They came there physically.
Yeah.
And saw you.
Yeah. And tried to drag me home. Begged me.
Physically or just?
No, just
begging you.
Begging me. Mom lost, it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard to see my mom that way.
What were you trying to tell her?
I told them that I didn't want to live Amish. I wanted something different. I wanted to drive a car. I wanted to have electricity. I wanted to listen to music, watch TV. There was all these things that I wanted to do and have that I can't have. And
they weren't, and there's no compromise.
No, there's none.
Yeah. But please come back.
Yeah. So I think they came down twice.
Yeah.
Came to his house twice. And by the end of the second round, Dad just basically said, well, you're not welcome back on the farm. You don't even come visit unless you're coming to stay. So don't even come by. So, and then time went on. Mom would call me a couple times a year. She still does.
Really?
And
so you hear from your mother.
Mm-hmm.
What are those conversations like?
There.
Is she curious of what you're doing, catching up on you, how you're living?
So it took about 10 years for that to happen. Well, closer to 12 years.
Yeah.
That for a long time, they never asked me what I do, how my life is. Even after I moved from Wisconsin to here and got into racing and all of that, they never asked me. It's like they didn't want to know what I do.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until just a couple of years ago where they got curious enough, I guess, or they, like, I don't know, just they laid everything else off to the side, whether it's their church stuff or whatever. Like, they decided that they want to know about my life.
Yeah.
And Mom started all of that. Dad didn't. Like, Dad still wouldn't have those conversations until last winter. I was actually went back for over Christmas time, and and me and my dad actually had a really good conversation.
The first one.
No.
The first conversation?
No, I've been back multiple times.
You go back and visit?
I do. I go back about once a year.
And you stay in the house?
For a couple hours, yeah.
You don't spend the night?
No, my mom wants me to, but
sure. You won't do it.
That.
Would your dad allow it?
He would.
Yeah. How about your siblings?
They're all married.
They're all married and their lives are...
Yeah, they've all got families.
Down the road with their lives. Do you see them?
I generally do when I go back, either on Thanksgiving or Christmas. Like, if I get time off of work, I go there, and Mom always will call me like a couple weeks before Thanksgiving to see if I'm coming up over Thanksgiving or Christmas and figure out a day.
I'm jumping way ahead, but so when your mom and your dad ask about what you're doing and what you've done, have they seen any of the imagery of you as a mechanic in the Cup Series, as a champion?
No.
They don't know what that looks like.
No,
but you've had conversations where you've done your best to describe what your life's been like. Do you tell them when you tell them that I've had this great journey and I've achieved X, Y, and Z? Are they proud? Are they?
I don't know if they're proud or not. Part of me says I think they are, but they would never say that. But they'll never tell me that if they are.
Okay. But they ask what you're, I guess help me understand, like, kind of what the conversation's like with your dad, that good one that you said you just had this past winter. Like, what was good? Why was it good?
Yep. That conversation was good because Dad we've never had a conversation about what I do, whether it's my personal racing that I do or my racing career as a mechanic.
Yeah.
Dad has never asked me about that.
How did it go?
Mom kind of kicked the conversation off. We're sitting around the dinner table talking, and Mom kind of asked a couple questions about, like, well, how's your racing going, and so I tell him, and then Dad starts asking questions. Dad's big into, like, he likes like engines and that type of stuff. So he starts asking those type of questions, and he's never done that before. So it ended up being a good conversation. Just they don't understand it. Like, they don't understand. They can't picture the difference of the car, my street stock that I race, that I drive,
and the one,
versus Kyle Larson.
Right.
Like,
that's the same.
It's the same.
Yeah. So, do you tell your mom that you win?
Yeah, I did last fall. Like, it's so weird. So, like, I tell them this, and they can't fathom the difference between what I do at the short track, the local short track,
big cup
versus
stuff.
the big cup stuff.
That's why I'm wondering. I mean, I know they're not. I imagine this would be against their practices, or their. You wouldn't be able to come to the house with an 8x10 and say, "Here's me winning a championship.
So
This is what this looks like.
they would look at it. They would look at the picture. They would give it to my siblings to look at it, and then they would throw it away.
Oh, you wouldn't be able to
They wouldn't keep it.
Oh, right. And if you gave your mother a trophy?
She wouldn't keep it. Like,
Really?
she'd give it back. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
just, they're not allowed
I get it. I mean,
to have something like that.
they're still, that world they're in is that's the world.
Yep.
Right? And so, no disrespect, but this trophy means nothing to me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so, like, it's weird. The last time I talked to my mom about it last Christmas, she's, like, scared of fame. Like, fame is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
So she's
Dangerous.
Yeah. It's not, it's against their rules, obviously. Like, it's just because that's not how they live. Like, prosperity, like, they don't like it. They don't like that type of stuff. So Mom is concerned that the racing I'm doing, I'm going to become famous, and like it's going to change me as a person, or like in her eyes, like, that's a bad thing.
Right.
So, like, I told her, I'm like, no, like, I'm not going to be famous. Like, the racing I'm doing is just a hobby. Like,
Yeah.
that's just what and so then trying to explain to them, like, the difference in the racing versus the car I drive versus the car I work on at work.
Yep.
You know, the millions of dollars of difference that it is of what I do.
Yeah.
But it's super,
And you'll never be able to take them to it.
No.
Never. I'm so relieved, man, that you still communicate with them. Because the traditional idea for people like myself is that once you leave, you never go back, you never communicate, it's over. You have to completely lose that life. You don't get to choose.
Yeah, so there was one span, probably about 2 or 3 years after I left, where they were really hard on me to come back. Like, every time Mom would call, it was a one-sided conversation begging me to come back, like, come back, Amish. You know, what you're doing is wrong. I'm going straight to hell, like, all these things. And finally I said, you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore. I told her, I said, I'm not going to answer any of your phone calls anymore.
You flipped it.
And if you want to have a father or a mother-son or a father-son conversation, once you decide that you can do that, and we don't talk about you trying to get me to come back, I've already made my decision. I'm not going to come back. You might as well accept that. And it took them about 10 years to accept that. I mean, they probably still haven't really, but
they don't love it.
Yeah. So it went about 2.5 years until finally, because my mom will send me a couple letters a year too. In one of her letters, she said that she wanted to talk and that they wouldn't bombard me with that anymore.
Nice.
And that she just wanted to have a mother-son conversation.
She just missed. She wanted to stay in touch. Dang, that's cool, man. So you went to local racetracks. Now you're out, right? You're on your own. Did you tell Al, hey man, I love racing. How do I go to races, right? How does this happen?
So the day I left,
Yeah.
we go back to his house. The Atlanta race is on
It's Sunday.
that afternoon.
Yeah.
I've never seen a race.
Was he a fan?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah, avid race fan. He wouldn't miss
Okay.
any of the top 3 series. So, and he was a Jimmy Johnson fan, and we sit there. The race starts, and I'm like, "What? Like, this is amazing! Like, this is incredible! because I didn't know what it was. Like, besides listen to it, I had never actually seen it in picture.
All right. You're in that moment of your life as far from being a mechanic as you could possibly be.
Oh, yeah.
Your buddy is a Jimmy Johnson fan. And you ultimately would end up winning a championship, right?
Yeah.
Working on Jimmy's car. Am I right? Or Kyle's car?
Kyle's car.
So, but you worked on Jimmy's car in the last couple of years of his career, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that seems like the most impossible thing. Like,
yeah, looking back now, like I still don't understand how this has all unfolded.
So that's what's so incredible, and why you're here today is because obviously I'm curious about the choice to leave the community and what that must be like, and never have I been able to actually have somebody who's done that to talk to and ask the questions of you. But then you not only get involved in motorsports, but you reach the pinnacle of it. It's like a 1 in a million chance.
I know. It's
Do you really know that? Do you realize that?
It honestly, it never really hit me until after probably about a year after we won the championship in 21 with Larson. I win that championship, and I built my own street stock, and it's super fast. And then it just kind of hits me, and I'm like, and I think when it really hit me was when I was talking to somebody about how I left. And now, and looking back, it seems, impossible. Like, there's like no chance of that
You're a
happening.
12-year-old in that barn one morning. I wonder, I mean, the odds are ridiculous of you accomplishing what you did.
I wonder what that odd would be.
I mean, the odds are 1 to 100 of you even leaving.
Yeah.
Right? Much less, what are you going to make yourself when you go out there? You could be anything. You could become anything. And seems like you chose one of the more challenging paths. But you go to local racetracks.
Yeah.
Right?
So that day that I left, we're watching an Atlanta race, and their pit stops are going on. And I point at the TV. I said, Al, why are they putting worn-out tires back on the car? Why would they do that? He says, oh, no, man. He says, those are racing slicks. Like, those are race tires.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Because I'd never seen anything like that. The only thing I'd ever seen was treaded tires on cars. So fast forward a couple months, we start going to the Dells, Slinger, to watch the races every Saturday night.
Sitting in the stands. I bet that was insane.
That was
some grassroots short track stuff.
Yeah, that was some of the best times. Like, just to try to understand what's going on.
Sure.
We watched it on TV.
The processes, right?
Yeah, like, how does this all work? And then so we sit there and we're watching every weekend, and finally we watched the hobby stocks, pure stocks. We're watching them, and we're like, we could do that. We could buy one of those cars. This is you
and Al?
Yeah, this is me, Al, and his brother.
Okay.
Because his brother had left a couple months after I did.
Gotcha.
We're like, we could buy a race-ready car, because we don't know how to work on it. Like, we certainly can't build one.
Right.
But we could buy one that's race-ready.
What is your employment at the time?
I was roofing.
Okay.
Doing a lot of roofing. So, like, winters were slow because it's cold. But, yeah. So we decide to split it. All three of us go in. We're going to go buy a car. So we find one that had won the championship at Slinger in, like, the 90s.
Old.
Like, it was an old car. And So we buy this thing, and we have nothing but problems. Like, we have overheating problems every weekend, and we don't know why. There's just problem after problem. And then, like, Al's driving it because I'm not 18 yet. His brother is barely 18. So, like, I'm trying to work on this thing, trying to figure out, how to wrench on stuff. And he would come in after practice and be like, yeah, it's pushing, it won't turn in the middle of the corner, like it just won't turn. And we didn't know how to fix it. Well, you're going to have to, like, figure it out because we don't know. And then finally we, like, would get together and we would split up and we would all go different directions down pit road. And we're like, I'm going to go talk to this guy down here. Like, he's pretty fast. Tell him what the car is doing and see what he says to do to the car to fix it,
right?
Like, to make it better. And we would all do that. We would come back and we would all three have different answers, like completely opposite. And we're like, yeah, so what do we do now?
Yeah.
Right? And we didn't know, like, most of the people or some of the people are not going to
tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm. We didn't know that that's how this, how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did that. We struggled through, but we had a blast. Man, we had so much fun, riding to the racetrack on an open trailer, half-ton pickup truck, barely anything for tools. Just, man, it was a lot of fun, but, like, we were just there. We weren't there to like, oh, we're going to try to win today. Like, we were just there to have fun and, like, enjoy the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, that's where it really, that's where the bug really bit.
So you start driving this car?
So that car I tested a few times, like when we would go on a Saturday or a Friday or Wednesday night test or something. I drove it a little bit, but not much, until 2014, where my finances got better and I was making more money, and I'm like, all right, now I can afford to we can do something different here. So me and Marlin, Al's brother, we decided we're going to go buy another car. Me and him would split that, right? So we do that, and we're going to split driving duties in 2014. And we had an engine built for this car that we bought, and we're like, we're going to run all season. We'll split duties and see if we can, like, win the Rookie of the Year, do something like that. And we go out the first race day. We go out and practice, and the motor's freaking smoking. Like, it's bad. So there was something wrong with it, so we couldn't race. So we just spent like $3,500 on this motor. So we're like, damn, like, now we don't have an engine, and the guy that built it was being pretty difficult to work with. And so we were like, well, our next option is to buy a crate motor, but we're going to have to wait a few months and save some money. So that's what we did. So by the end of it, it was a couple months later, we go buy another engine. And, like, this whole time, like, up until 2014, I didn't have a lot of wrenching experience besides what I was doing.
Yeah.
But going into 2014, I was starting to help a lot of super late model guys work on their cars. So, like, after work, if I wasn't working on my car, I would go help them on their supers, like getting their late models ready for Saturday, and then go with them to the racetrack on Saturday night. So we get our car put back together, and then we were like, you know what? It's only like 7 races left in the season or something. We'd be better off if only one of us drove it, so we can get better feedback and figure out how to make this car better, and then figure out what we're going to do next year and split driving duties next year or buy another car or something. So we decided I would drive those 7 races. I think it was either 7 or 8 races. And it went okay, for not really knowing still what we were doing. I had met a couple guys at that point that were trying to help us, that would give us advice that was truthful and accurate. We would have like 15, 16 cars, and I would generally almost qualify in the top 6, so I would be able to run the fast dash, and which was like a 8-lap like heat race.
Yep.
And that was a big deal because then they would invert the fast dash guys, and that's how you started the feature.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was quite the experience. It was.
What makes you move to North Carolina?
Towards the end of 14, I was working a lot, working on my car or our car, trying to get that thing better, like trying to figure out how to go faster, wanted to learn more. And I was almost every night of the week helping buddies on their cars, their late models, for multiple reasons. One was I wanted to learn how to work on a car, how to make it go faster.
Yep.
So by the end of 2014, I'm like, man, like I'm wore out. Like I'm working all the time on race cars at night, and I loved it. It was amazing. So I'm like, man, I wonder if I could go to North Carolina, because at that point, like I had kind of figured out that this is where everybody was. Everybody's in Charlotte.
Yep.
And I wonder if I could go to North Carolina and get a job to work on race cars for a living. And I had raced against a guy, never talked to him, but I raced against him a couple times at the Dells in 14, and I had seen he had moved here. And so the first 2 weeks of 15 in January, I took off of work, which wasn't a big deal. It was snowing and windy, so we weren't doing roofs. And I drive to North Carolina. I'm going to go find a job. And I gave myself 2 weeks. If I can't find a job in 2 weeks, then I'll figure something else out. I'll stay in Wisconsin for another year and try to figure out a different route or something different. And of course, I had a bunch of resumes made up, and I mean, there was nothing on it, right?
Yeah.
I was a roofer. I was a roofer that worked on my buddy's late models and did a little bit of my own racing. So I came down and got a long-term like motel thing, and I stayed there. And every day I would go to race shops. I would hit like 6 or 7 or 8 race shops a day, everywhere. Mooresville, Concord. I was everywhere. Anything from modified teams, late model teams, cup teams, it didn't matter. I dropped one off here.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first week goes by, and on Friday, I talked to an ARCA team down in the drag strip park, and he sounded somewhat promising, that he would consider me. So I'm like, all right, that's my first hit, right? Everybody else was like, didn't want to talk to me, didn't have time. Like, oh, yeah, put your resume in there, we'll look over it, right?
Yep.
So the second week rolls around, Monday comes and goes, we're driving all over the place. 2 of my buddies came down with me just to hang out.
Yep.
And Monday, nothing. Tuesday, it was like mid-morning, I stopped by Richie Waters Motorsports, late model team. And he was doing some truck stuff too as well. And I walk in, I walk up and there's nobody in the office. Like the office is empty. I can see through the glass windows. So there's a door off to the side that says employees only. And I'm like, well, let's see what's behind this door, because at this point I don't have anything to lose. So I open the door and I look in, and there's like a bunch of late models lined up, and I'm like, man, that's awesome, right? So I walk in, and there's 2 guys working on the setup plate. One younger kid about my age, and another guy, older guy, he wasn't that old, but grumpy old feller, Bobby Gill. And I walk up to him, and Bobby looks at me like I'm in the wrong place. Like, what are you doing in here, you know? But that's just how he was. So I'm like, yeah, here to drop off a resume, and I'm like sweating bullets. I'm like, man, I shouldn't be in here, right? So I'm handing my resume. He says, yeah, boss is upstairs. I'll get it to him. I'm like, all right, thanks. And I go out the door, and I'm like, well, that was a waste. Like, he's going to throw that right in the trash can. And so we sit in the parking lot for probably 5 minutes, and I'm on my maps trying to figure out where this ARCA team was that I was at Friday, because I hadn't heard from him. So I'm like, I'm going to drive over there and just show my face again, like see what I can make happen. So we leave, and my phone rings, and it's a 704 number, and I'm like, all right, this is that ARCA team calling me. So I answer it, and it's Richie Waters. He says, hey, you just dropped the resume off. Yep. Can you come back, talk? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I'll be right there. So make a U-turn, go back, and I go up in his office, and we sit down and we talk and work out a deal. Talked to him for like 20 minutes. Shook his hand. I told him I could start on Monday.
Yeah.
This was Tuesday. And I'm like, okay. Like, I'm starting Monday. I still got to go back home to get my stuff and take my buddies back and come back and find a place to live.
Yeah.
So we go back home. Before we went home, I messaged this guy that I had raced against in 14, but I'd never met him. I'm like, hey, like, I'm in the area and, like, looking for a job. So I had met up with him, like, over that weekend. He's like, yeah, if you get lucky enough to get a job, like, yeah, you can sleep on my couch, you know? So I call him after I left Richie's. Hey, I need a place to stay next week. And I go home, and yeah, that's how it started. Loaded up my stuff and came back, and started working for Richie.
So you go to the Snowball Derby with Richie in 2015. There you established contact at MDM Motorsports. You worked for them in 2016 under Marty Lindley, who's here.
Yep.
You ran K&N East in an ARC series with drivers like Kyle Benjamin and Harrison Burton and Zane Smith, and that's recent.
Yeah.
You had a cousin that worked over at Ganassi and got you hooked up over there to interview with Chad on the 48 car.
Yeah.
For Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, so Ron Malik was car chiefing on the 48. So his now wife Ashley was at Ganassi, so my cousin Ruben was knew her.
Yep.
So that's how the contact happened with Ron.
Do you remember going into Chad's office? Or did you have yeah. So you'd been around for, let's say, 3.5 years, kind of?
So the conversation with Chad actually started in early of 18, like the end of 17.
Yeah.
So I'd been at MDM for 2 years. But Chad wouldn't hire me. He said I didn't have enough experience.
Right.
Like, I was way too green. I didn't know what I was doing.
For sure.
I'm like, man, all right. So we talked that whole winter, like back and forth. And then Ron came off the road. Jesse becomes the new car chief. And now I'm like in contact with him. Jesse's still trying to get me on. January rolls around, and I tell him, I'm like, look, I'm going to commit to MDM and to Marty to work for them for 2018 through the championship. We're running for the championship with Zane Smith and ARCA. So I'm not going to walk out halfway through the season. So, like, just so you know. So I would really like to make this happen, like, if we can. And Chad wouldn't do it. He said I didn't have enough experience still. So I'm like, all right. So it goes a couple months into the season, my phone rings. It's Chad. He says, hey, I need a mechanic. And I'm like, so as time had gone on from when I became a race fan and like figured out how the sport was, the 48 was the pinnacle. When I moved here, that was my goal. I wanted to work for the best team, for the best crew chief driver combination. Like they were the best.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the best, be part of the best, beat the best. And now we're, a couple months into the season, and I tell him no thanks. Like I turn it down. I tell him no. Like it's what I wanted. I wanted to work on the 48, but we're in I think it was like June, and I'm like, no. Like I told you beginning of the year, if I commit to something or commit to someone, that's what I stick to. I can't bail halfway through the season. Yeah. And I'm like, man, like this is probably a mistake.
No
I will never get that opportunity again.
Yeah.
Never get it. And then as that summer went on, they stayed in contact, and sure enough, it all came down to in October, they hired me. We went to Kansas for our finale, ARCA finale. Our race is Friday. My hire date was Saturday at Hendrick. And MDM guys, I helped them. We loaded everything. They went home. Chad left me his keys in his rental car and the address to their hotel. And, like, I didn't know any of the guys. I knew Jesse, sort of. Like, I had met with him, I think, twice during that time. But I didn't know any of the mechanics. Like, I didn't know anybody. And so now I wake up the next morning in their hotel and go with them to the racetrack, like, trying to meet everybody and just, like, figure it out as we go. So they have a fill-in front-end mechanic, and I'm supposed to shadow him all weekend. All right, so I like watch everything he does, figure out how everything works. And we go back to the shop Tuesday morning or whatever it was that next week. And all right, you're the front end mechanic on the 48. Like I'm like, I thought I was going to shadow him for another like week or two or something, you know. Nope. It's all you. So we go to Martinsville, and I'm the primary mechanic on a cup car. And I've never worked on a cup car. Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Jesus.
But at the end of the day, it's nuts and bolts and wrenches, and I figured it out. So
you worked on that team until they change over to the 5 and Kyle Larson comes to race, and y'all win a championship. You also, as you've mentioned a couple times, you build a street stock car and you're back to driving, and you're driving good. You're winning races. You've moved off of the road, off of the cup stuff, right? Now you're kind of you're doing some track cars and turning old Gen 6s into public, cars to sell to public folks. You worked on the Garage 56 program as a front end mechanic there. You went overseas to the race.
Yep.
And you started an automotive repair company called Yoder Automotive, based in Kannapolis, North Carolina.
Yep.
What's your plan?
My plan is to do short track racing.
You love driving your street stock.
I do.
Right? You want to do that as much as you can.
I want to do that as much as I can.
That was the motivation for you won this championship as a mechanic on the 5 car for Larson, but that was the motivation to move away from that because you hadn't been there long.
Yeah.
Right? You could have stayed there. Made great money. Right?
Yeah.
But you're like, I got to drive. I want to race.
That part of that decision to leave cup racing also happened with NASCAR going away from
the car. You
the
knew
practice.
Oh, practice. Yeah. And so
when we had the 1 hour practice sessions or hour and a half,
you could work.
Like, as a mechanic,
yeah,
I could work. Like when we had changes, spring changes,
yeah,
shock
that
changes,
was your job.
Like whatever it was, that the competitor in me, like it was a team aspect, right?
Sure.
You're trying to win as a team. But at the same time, I'm so competitive that I would watch other mechanics do their shock changes, do their spring changes. I would like count in my head how long it took them, and I'm like, I'm gonna beat that. I'm gonna be faster and better than that. And I'm just super competitive, right? So when practice went away, now that goes away.
Yeah.
You don't really have that anymore.
Yeah.
So I needed another challenge. I needed a challenge, and it kind of fell into the same time. My car was done. We were winning races, cars fast, and it rekindled the passion I had for racing, which was on the short tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the reason I got into racing, was because of going to the short tracks. Yeah, we watched it on TV,
Yep.
but that was the whole reason. So now that's my goal, is to do short track racing, race my street stock. I'd like to move up in the late models at some point, you know, if money happens, right, sponsors, that type of stuff, and run Yoder Automotive, repair shop, and yeah, that's...
Right now, where do you work?
I work at Hendrick Performance.
All right. And so where Yoder Automotive, is it a physical building?
Yeah.
And it's a business.
Yep.
Who manages it for you?
I do.
But you have you're at Hendrick. You work there.
I work like 80 hours a week. I work my 40 hours a week at Hendrick. Are you hoping that, you know, the Yoder Automotive is eventually your sole responsibility, right? Yeah, I want to get to that full time at some point.
Who's helping you with that?
Nobody, just me.
No partners.
Nope. And that's, I would like to expand and maybe like get some investors involved or something. Like, my goal is to have 3 and 5 bay repair shops, multiple locations eventually.
Yeah.
But right now I'm just doing it in my 1 bay shop at my house. And I'm busy. I'm slammed. Like, I'm working every night of the week, weekends.
Fixing what? Everything?
Everything. Anything mechanical. Whether it's brake jobs, struts, water pumps, suspension components, anything mechanical.
Is that pay well compared to somebody who works in NASCAR?
It does.
It does.
So yeah, that's my goal, is to do that full time. And
you're the Tri-County Speedway track champion in 2023 last year.
Yep. Yeah, we had a pretty good season last year.
You're all right, man. So if everything works out perfectly, in 5 or 10 years, you're going to have a couple shops, Yoder Automotive, and racing short tracks. That's what you want.
Yep. I want to do that. And then, like, my ultimate goal is a couple things. With the repair shops, once they get lucrative and get financially in a good spot, I want to do some nonprofit stuff with helping veterans. There's a lot of things that they need help with. So like that's like something more, right? Another goal between doing that and helping local racetracks, supporting supporting racers with sponsorship opportunities, supporting racetracks with sponsorship stuff. Like, that's what I want Yoder Automotive to be able to do.
Yeah.
On down the road.
Man, that's incredible. And I don't see why that won't happen. You've made the impossible possible. And I wonder if, is there other, let me ask you this question. When you think about other people that left the community and had success, are they, when you were living with your parents, did you know of Al and what he was doing? Did you know of other people that had left and what they were able to do? Do you think that people back in your community that want to know what you've done, know what you did?
If they want to know,
they could find it out, right?
Out.
Do you know anybody that left after you besides Al and those close relationships?
There was a couple guys that left that were like in my same age group.
Yep.
And then,
do you think you influenced anybody?
I don't know.
Do you think has anybody ever have you ever helped anybody?
No,
Yeah.
I never. There was a couple. The biggest, my cousin left, and he was, he's 3 years younger than I am. 4 years.
Do you think you influenced him?
I think a little bit, but he already knew at a young age that he wanted to leave. Like, by the time he was 15, he knew that he wanted.
Is there anybody that
different.
left the community like that you still communicate with?
There's a few.
Aren't there people in the industry, in the NASCAR industry?
My cousin is one of them.
Right?
Yeah. My cousin Ruben is one of them. Actually, he just left as well and started his own business a year ago. Started his own RJ's Home Improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of is leaving the racing industry. He helps me on my car on weekends, loves it.
Sure.
He supports me financially with sponsorship stuff through his company. And then there's another kid that actually works with me at Hendrick Performance, Furman. He left the Amish community probably 5 years after I did, but I didn't know him.
Yeah.
I met him after he left.
He'd already gotten out and figured it out.
Yeah.
Do you have conversations with him that you wouldn't have with maybe me or somebody else that might work there with you? Is there sort of this understanding or this, sort of a trust maybe because they know?
Yeah, there's
Right.
definitely a different connection.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
That's got to be
definitely.
interesting. What about the sport of NASCAR excited you, surprised you? Think back of your whole journey, right? You're coming, you're entering the world all anew, right? And you know nothing about NASCAR, and you're going to go and sit on the couch with your buddy and watch your first race. Now you've been through that whole process. What about the sport what's the best about it? Tell me why you love stock car racing, NASCAR, and cup cars, and that whole process of being involved in that side of the industry at the elite level.
For me, it came down to the competition side of it. How competitive it is, not just on the racetrack, but in the industry, working for race teams. I loved it. I do love it because of the competitive side of it.
Yeah.
I'm super goal driven, and competitive. So whatever I do, I have this laser focus of being the best, and that was what I loved about cup racing. Was not only were you as a team with your team every Sunday trying to be the best or beat the best. As a mechanic, I wanted to be the best mechanic on pit road.
Yeah.
In the garage. That was that was part of it. That's what drove me to want to do it. And it all was born from the sounds, the smells, watching it, being there. When that first couple of years after I left, we would go to all the races close to us. Like we'd go to Kansas, Chicagoland, Iowa to watch the races.
Yeah.
Milwaukee, got to see the last what was then nationwide race at Milwaukee. Like that was just that's where it was born, and I love it.
What are you gonna miss about it? Now I know you're racing your street stock car, but I mean from the cup level, your involvement as a mechanic and seeing the pinnacle of the sport as a champion. What will you miss?
The biggest thing I miss is the team.
The camaraderie.
The team, your other mechanics, your car chief, the engineers, your pit crew. The connection that you have, or that we had anyway, like on the 48 and the 5, I felt like was probably, I don't know, maybe even better than a lot of teams have. But the camaraderie of that team aspect, I miss that.
Yeah.
I do, for sure.
Well, man, I'm telling you, I'm thankful for you. I appreciate you being... I'm glad I ran into you at Florence. I wanted to personally, I wanted to get you on my show, and I was lucky to see you there and be able to ask you if you'd come on. I wasn't sure exactly how comfortable you'd be sharing your experience. And with what I heard today, man, it was a tough process and an emotional process, one that still, affects you today. But what a story. Just an incredible story. I appreciate who you are, the example you set, and good luck on still competing and racing on the grassroots level, whatever that may be, as you try to grow that part of your life. Also, this automotive business that you've created, that I am I'm almost assured it'll be a success because of the person you seem to be. But man, I've really enjoyed this. This was as fun as I thought it'd be. It really was, and thankful for being transparent and open about it.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I've been very successful in, I feel like, a pretty short amount of time from leaving and doing everything I have. But it comes down to people, meeting the right people, surrounding yourself with the right people. And I've been super fortunate.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was thinking about when you were telling me about the way you got yourself involved in racing. One of the hardest questions that you and I probably both have gotten asked at some point is, how do you get into racing? How do you do it? People think that there's this magic door you walk through, and or there's this I'm gonna tell you where you need to go apply for a job, and that's how do you that it doesn't exist, right? Yeah. But the way you did it, that's how you do it, right? You help this guy on his super late model car at night when you're done with your day job. You go to the racetrack and grind and volunteer a lot of time, give away a lot of time, just because of the experience that you gain on working and learning how cars work, right?
Yeah.
That you're a perfect example of how you get into racing. That's how, right? And it is possible to run up that ladder very quickly.
Yeah.
If you're applying yourself and like you say, meeting the right people and building the right relationships and recognizing that person that could help you and assist you in that next opportunity. Pretty incredible, man. Good job. Marlin, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, Marlin Yoder on the Dale Jr. Download. All right, so we just had Marlin Yoder on the Ally guest segment, and it was a long conversation, but I didn't want to, the conversation about him leaving the Amish community is one thing, and then there's, you got to allow this guy to tell his story about how he gets into racing, right? How he becomes successful in racing. So I wanted to certainly give that its due, and I don't know that I've ever been in such suspense in this room at this table as I was hearing him tell a story about what's coming up the driveway. Is it going to be his buddy Al or his dad? And so we go through, and he goes upstairs and locks himself in the yard. Oh, man. And then you almost could see how affected he is emotionally by, his mother and his father, the relationships and the dynamics there, and how that might have hurt his mother. How it did hurt his mother, broke her heart, and how that affects him personally, but how determined he stayed to the task, right, or to the plan. And this business that he started, Yoder Automotive, in Kannapolis, North Carolina.
Got the business card.
Yeah. Listen, remember this. Yoder Automotive. I promise you that you will be hearing, I promise you that business will succeed. Right? When you sit down in front of people and meet them, I don't hardly know Marlin. I hardly know him. But when you sit there and listen to his story and know everything that he did, and he's telling you he's starting this business, it's not going to fail.
No, I don't think so.
It's not going to fail. So, just impressive. Very impressive. And so, thankful for him to come on to the show. I know it's not necessarily our traditional guest, but it's a great story. And one of the best stories I think you'll hear out of the Dale Jr. Download guest segments this year. It's one of my favorites for sure. And so we're thankful, and that's going to wrap it up. Thank you, Ally, for everything that you do, supporting the guest segment on this show week in and week out. Ally, no matter what you're saving for, whether it's race tickets, whether it's a street stock car, a new engine, or a new home even, we're all better off with an Ally. Let's get to the white flag. As usual, the teardown and Jeff Gluck with Jordan Bianchi. Actions detrimental, Denny Hamlin and door bumper clear. All those dropped. If you haven't listened, get on it. What are you waiting for? Also, Dirty Air came out yesterday. Chase Elliott called in, the winner from Texas. We debated whether we need more practice. And is Texas a good racetrack again?
Which, by the way, to tie it back to the interview, Marlin said he wanted more practice.
Yeah, he did.
And
that's one of the reasons why he moved on.
I know.
He kind of took his job away.
It's the argument for more practice.
It is. Dropping today, Speed Street with Connor Daly and Chase Holden with guest Kyle Larson. And then dropping tomorrow, Dirty Mo Doe with Steve Letarte. They preview Texas. We talked about that a little bit on Dirty Air, and it's so compelling. Now that North Carolina is open as a state that allows sports betting, man, is it been a lot to learn. So if you want to know, more about it, Dirty Mo Doe with Steve Letarte this Thursday. DJD Reloaded. Carla and the gang are back at it. Last week, they talked about charters or the lack of charters for some of these open teams like Carl Long that plan to compete this year. How do they go about that? How can they make money? Can you make money not owning a charter in the NASCAR Cup Series? What will they talk about this Thursday? It's been a great show. Carl has done a great job out of the gate this year, taking ownership of DJD Reloaded, and it's quickly becoming one of my favorite shows we do each week because of the versatility and the different conversations that tend to happen. It's not been the same show yet. Anyhow, that's it for this week for me. I will see you guys next week. Talladega this weekend should be a blast. I'll be tuning in. Who's going to win it? I mean, you got to think that Blaney's got a great shot. He's one of the better ones at Talladega and at restrictor plate racing. He seems to be running right there at the front when they're making those final moves. Can Chase Elliott build off of the momentum from his Texas win? He's got some success at Talladega. Maybe there'll be a first-time winner, somebody new, similar to what we had at Atlanta, where someone maybe, unfamiliar with the top 10 or the top 5 in points punches their ticket into the playoffs. That'd be cool. You love it when somebody, an underdog comes out of the weeds and steals a win, so it could happen. Anyways, we'll see you.